Welcome back. Our continuing coverage of the governorship election in Anambra State, where we've been following through the activities and the exercise since it started this morning. Well, it's not over because the winner has not been announced. Results are trickling in. When I use the word trickling in, if over 80% of the results have already been uploaded on the IREV, which is the viewing portal provided by INEC, but it's a different matter altogether in moving those results from each of the 21 local government areas across the over 300 wards and across over 5,000 polling units that have now been collated to the headquarters where the official announcements will be made. But our conversation continues with members of Nigerian civil society situation room who have been on ground before, during, and are here after the entire exercise. Joining me again in the studio is Austin Aigbe, is a situation room analyst, and Mr. Bukola Idowu, KDI, and situation room analyst as well. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a busy one for all of you. And I always like to start from how has it been? Well, you were on TV before the exercise. At that time, it was expectation.
Yeah.
Now, expectation is over. It's done, dusted, at least a particular phase. What do you make of the exercise?
I think what we have today, I think starting with how has it been, I think it's been fine today throughout, as expected in terms of the peaceful conduct of the election, in terms of the processes, you know, when the process is going on and then you will say it's been fine is what, what we are expecting. The only area we have, for me personally, I have challenge with is just the turnout. You know, what we have seen so far has been a bit low to what we are expecting. And but all in all, you look at the process from the beginning to the end, and we are approaching the end now. So you say this is pretty still okay. You know, rightly said, 81% already on IREV. That shows that it's even possible that before 10 p.m. today, we should have 100% on IREV, and that is going to be a good signal for the election.
Fantastic. Let me come to you, Mr. Aigbe. Same question, because I realize that there's a lot we're going to be touching on repeatedly because of the consistency in our observation. But I like a generic overview. You've moved around, you've seen, maybe walk us through the places you visited and made your observations and tell us what you saw.
So first, the way I would like to look at it is to look at historical background. So what I've seen today is more like, will I say expected, but beyond expectation is a flip side of it that in 2017 in this town, what we saw in this election, we didn't see it. In 2021, what we saw in this election, we didn't see it. Why we are talking about voter turnout that is low today came from 2021, when disinformation played a huge game that led to almost an election of what we classified then as election of disinformation. It was a disinformation tagged election, because most of the feelers that came out was that election was going to be violent, people were going to be killed, to the point that 2 days before the election, some of us got voice notes saying that we should leave our hotel, that they were going to bomb the hotels. 2021. Now we are in 2025. So what has happened today is fantastic. I went around Oka South, particularly over like close to 20 polling units. In the early hours of the morning, between the hours of 8 and 9, you see most polling units up to somewhere around Ekioka, where the market was operational. People were buying and selling happening freely. Filling station close to the first headquarters, running normal. On the street, vehicular movement looked unabated. It was more like freedom. That wasn't the landscape just 4 years ago. With that peace that transformed, the peace in this election, arguably, is something we should celebrate. And I want to give it to the Indian Anambra for avoiding disinformation and not spreading same, avoiding to actually create an environment that is not, an ambience that is not suitable. People talked about vote buying and all, but sometimes you look at the political narrative, most of the people who turn out to vote, arguably, were actually mobilized to vote. I think we may get more than 10% in this election. But if we don't, the peace we are taking away from Anambra is very sine qua non, and we must not undermine it. Because if you saw 2 previous elections, you will praise these elections. Is it the Nigerian police? Maybe 45,000 plus deployment. In Oka South, specifically across the polling unit, you see massive deployment of police officials, party agents in a bit minimal deployment level. Voters' enthusiasm seems to be low. In one particular polling unit, community comprehensive school, by 9 a.m., officials are set up. By 9:10 a.m., no voter has showed up. I would love to go and check the result of that polling unit if eventually they showed up. But when we are returning back after that 8 a.m. movement, when we are returning back, most of the polling units we saw while heading out that were not started at that 8:30 had picked up. In fact, of interesting note, maybe this will be very strange. In one of the polling units that is a Iraq center, where you will expect voting to start at least by 8 a.m. based on the fact that in that Iraq is Iraq center. Polling did not start. By 9 a.m., they had not set up. Was there a particular reason for it? In a polling unit around by 1 or 2 units, polling unit just 200 meters away from INEC headquarters, by 8:30, 8:40, officials had not arrived, whereas police officials were already there. So maybe we need to look at those. Was there a reason why certain centers, city centers, did not open in record time? Maybe why others further away had opened maybe around between. But from our report, from what we already see, is that on average, about 9:15 will be a takeoff time where polling started in all honesty in these elections.
Let me continue, Mr. Ado. So for him, if I heard him right, victory, peace is victory. Apathy is noted. Is that what you take away from this? But I also want you to walk us through where you visited.
So I think, first of all, we need to talk about election holistically, and not in terms of casting the ballot alone, that is the election. Election is a process. So it starts from, as a matter of fact, it starts from voter registration to election adjudication. Because this election also is possible if this election you can't say is over today, because until you are sure that one of the candidates is not, or whoever one of the candidates is not going to court. Because people need to also understand that the process of election adjudication, electoral justice is part of the election. And that is why you will have conducted an election and then you go to bed and then the judges are declaring that that election that you conducted in 6 months ago, the person there is not the winner, this is the winner. Now, so it's a whole process that needs to be seen through. But the process at which we are today, that people are coming out to cast their ballots, I can say that, look, with what we have seen, with the data we have, I can say that, well, it turned out well. One of the things you need to understand again is that there is no election, even all over the world, that is 100% each free. But what are those things that we have seen that are a bit that we can actually say we need to regularize? Number one, what he has said about late commencement in some certain polling units, most especially polling units in urban areas. And we need to start studying this particular trend. And I think one of the things you also have to know, again, that we normally joke about is that the moment you start tabulating now, you will even see the results of the capital coming last. They will be waiting for the result from the capital. So the same thing about...
The way you're sounding like you're suspecting somebody.
No, I'm not.
Or you're suspecting the system.
No,
I understand.
It's trend.
I understand that.
It's trend.
It's difficult to understand because the capital city or the urban center is supposed to have the benefit of everything.
Of everything.
Good. And so speed and efficiency should be one of the markers. And then when urban centers don't have it, then what exactly are we doing?
So for instance, now, you should have been done with urban center until you were expecting from the rural, from the riverine area, from those places that are far out, 3-4 hours to the state capital. But it's possible those places will arrive earlier before the capital you are in. And these are what I said we need to start looking at. And like I said, it's a trend. It's what we have seen. In 2023 general election, in most of the polling units in FCT, they started late. So one of those are the things we are looking at. So those are pockets of lateness that we have seen. However, you also find out that one of the things I've also observed, still on the urban versus rural voter or voting pattern, you still find out that even in the rural area, in most of the local government that you think that are not urban, you have more turnout than in the capital. So you have more turnout. In fact, he was talking about some places that, oh, as of this time, people have not been there. Yeah, but I can tell you that places you have in this Oka that I visited or that we visited, and some of our polling observers also visited, that out of 200, as of 11, 12, they've just done accreditation and less than 10 people. And then so that particular trend need to be studied and something need to be done about that. But again, in terms of, you also have to look at the process of INEC. What I say, the process of INEC, which is the election administration itself. Number one, the BVAS functionality. Number two, the completeness or how intact are the election materials. Okay. So you have to look at that. But for the data we got, now 95% of the report we have said the BVAS work effectively.
Well, there's a lot of questions for both of you. Yeah. But I understand you have some things to show us. But I don't know, maybe you can walk us through it but while our audience...
Yes, that is one of the things I'll say. So for instance now, one of the things we are talking about is the BVAS, the BVAS functionality, 90%, 95% efficiency, which is very good. Now the remaining 5% we talked about are just in pockets of itchy somewhere, and in fact the remaining 5%, you have 3% of them that were replaced, that were already replaced in terms of the rack tech coming to replace it and then make it functional. So if you look at that, then you give it to INEC that look, they perform better in that area. Then one of the concerns we had today, before the election, and that we saw that look, it's actually something that that they really worked on, and it worked also effortlessly, is the understanding of the process and operationalization of the process by the ad hoc staff. Because they were trained late, the recruitment started late, they were trained late, and at the same, in fact, as a matter of fact, most of the training finished on the 6th, which is like 2 days to this election. But we also saw on the feed that they are able to pick up and something was done. So we also need to give INEC that, look, they did well in that area. Then again, you also have to look at in terms of the process of results management. Is the process, I'm not saying the entire, but one of the aspects in terms of uploading, as of now, having over 80% on IREF also shows that, that efficiency. However, this does not mean that I'm actually saying, look, they did well. What I'm saying that can also be the factor of the low voter turnout that is aiding this thing to go seamlessly. But whichever way, this is what the data is saying, and it shows the pass mark. Then one of the things we also have to look at is that you look at the number of cases of violence that happen in this election compared to the entire election. What we recorded so far from our situation room is just 28 cases, 28 pockets there. And when you look at 28...
What's the nature of the 28?
So number one, you have just like group clash. You have intimidation by some of the, and harassment by some of the, party agents. And you also have, in particular place, a case where the security man was, due to his overzealousness, wounded, released the tear gas, and they wounded an observer. So when you look at that, it's just a pocket of those things, and it's just 28. So even if it happened in 28 polling units, compared to 5,718 polling units, you find out that, look, the police and the security agencies have actually done well. But my major concern, again, is that we also look at, in terms of the police deployment. So, and I think bringing 45,000 people, force men into this state is why it's commendable. But I think going forward, it's working by this. Going forward, one of the things we would like to also see is that deployment framework strategy, because you get to some places you see 2, you get to some places you see 3, you get to some places you see 1, and at the same time, what's that kind of figure? For accountability's sake, we need to begin to look at that figure entirely, because even if you look at 3,000, you understand, multiply by 5,718 polling units, you still cannot get 45,000. So, and you keep wondering, where are the rest?
Yeah,
so,
that's an empirical question that Achike asked before he left here. I know you were nodding. You wanted to answer some of the things he said.
Well, the question about the police. So,
yes.
I stopped asking those questions. Where are they? Because there are intelligence background to this conversation. Okay. You may see 20 police officers in uniform in the particular polling unit. There may actually be about 50 there, but you can't identify them. I'm not saying there could not be some underneath. The police understand this. So, and don't also forget, while we talk about this deployment of police, over 45,000 is worrisome. In the Situation Room statement yesterday, it was evident that the deployment is worrisome and it needs to be checked. But if you were here in 2021, you would not talk about that number, because you needed those numbers to be able to show some kind of show of force that happened in this state on Thursday. A show of force, the military and all of those, trying to show that we are ready to enforce rules and to enforce that criminals don't interfere. Don't forget that this state borders other states and is a standalone. Those questions continue to come. How do we do a standalone election so that people from Delta State don't gain access to Anambra State, for instance? In a dual election, it was about the same number of deployment. Meanwhile, that's just the police. We're not talking about the DSS. They have their own deployment. You saw them in blacks and with their gun movement and all of that. But you also have the road safety. You have the civil defense, all of those. So at the end of the day, do we really need all of these? I also worry when we waste state resource in conducting an election. If this election goes and the number of turnout is less than 20% or even less than 40%, just like you have in the Nigerian election, general election that saw the President Buhari election in 2023, where about less than 30% turned out to vote. The waste of ballot papers is something that we need to begin to interrogate. If you talk about police deployment, fine. Maybe this personnel that were deployed earn some pay. Yes, it may become some kind of waste because it has an advantage. It also has its own disadvantage. Because if you see 45,000 police coming to Anambra, the fear could actually cause people not to come out to vote. That's on one side. But it can also increase the confidence that the electoral system and the security architecture in the state will be enhanced and that could be safe. So where do we stand in either of this? But for off-cycle election, it's worrisome. You need to be clear of those border communities and ensure that they are well policed. Those numbers, police will never tell you that there is this person in plain clothes is a police person, but this person in uniform. A lot of them came in 2 days ago from Abia State, from Enugu State. They moved in with their uniform. You could see them. But there's also low police deployment outside of the city center. From what observers are bringing in to the Situation Room. In certain other areas, they say that you will just go to a polling unit. No, if one of the candidates, let me not mention candidate name, one of the candidates in the particular polling unit, there was no police personnel. Maybe that's the reason why the candidate didn't show up early. He had to wait until such a time. So going back to waste, if in this election, 2.8 million registered voters, and I'm sure INEC could have printed 3 million ballot papers, and the turnout is less than maybe 1 million, it means we will waste about 2 million ballot papers. What is that telling us for cost of elections? It's worrisome for me. So is it not this time part of electoral reform that KD and Situation Room, everybody is working towards, to begin to think of reduction in our election administration? Is there a way, not a way, let me not say is there a way, there's a way. Because the BVAS that we use today is able to do things that INEC, the former INEC administration had seen to the future. In Jega's administration, the smart card was introduced and it played its role. Today, with the aid of the BVAS, integrity in the election is coming in. And people argue that the BVAS machine has been able to remove ghost voters. Wherein many years ago, we used to, like it was saying just a few minutes ago, those days where you have votes coming in late are the rural communities. Where, before you know what's happening, the way politicians do it, they'll be asking, which one has come in? Okay, you want to increase the one that will later come in to outnumber the one that has come in earlier. So they are no longer doing the rural community, they are not doing the urban community. Is there a reason for that? Like I said, we need to study and interrogate those interfaces. But beyond that, it's electronic voting system that matter now. I'm not talking about internet voting. Because when people hear about electronic voting, no, they will hack the system. They are not hacking the BVAS result. The result of the Form EC8A is uploaded. It's difficult to pull down a PDF document or a JPEG document and change the data. It cannot happen. The only thing you can do is to shut down the system, maybe having what they call glitches. Aside that, it's a difficult terrain. But beyond that, people talked about all manner of mechanism with which you can transmit. But that's not where we are now. But we must begin to think about, in an election, in a country that usually will be boring every now and then, do we need to still be spending these huge resources in our election? These are questions. And maybe just to quickly also state that even though the party agent, because I see the role of party agent, because sometimes you will ask, what are the party agents doing? I think at this time, we should begin to hold political parties also accountable. You don't go ahead to challenge results, maybe like...
I want you to hold that thought in just a moment. I'll come back to it because it's quite important that we have 16 political parties participating in this election. Where I covered, when it was announced, the INEC official, the polling unit officer was asking, where are the agents? I was watching to see what... As at that time, I don't think I saw any agent. And then tomorrow, you'll be... But I'll come back to both of you on this agents matter and other issues as well. But just to tell our viewers that we're looking at the portal, the IREP portal. This is just to praise INEC for what they are doing. When they do well, we appreciate them.
Yes.
From what I'm seeing here, about 89% or so of the results have so far been uploaded. So let me give the exact number. Out of the 5,720 as listed by INEC as the number of polling units, 5,109 of those results have so far been uploaded. Of course, upload may be there, but it's not completed. So there are different series in terms of, but at least it has left, it's right in the BVAS machine and it's communicating with this portal. So in case you voted and you were sure of the announcement of the result at your polling unit, you could go quickly check at your polling unit, look at your local government, your ward, and then finally your polling unit to know exactly whether it's what was announced that you're seeing.
Yes.
The reason I had to do this and come back to you, let me start from him too. Okay, since I were with you, before I come to Mr. Edo, I was asking, I think, one of the observers, I said, a situation where the party agent has a couple of responsibilities. First, to observe the process that is fair. In fact, under, I think, Section 60 or so of the Electoral Act, he has the power to ask for a recount at least once if he's not confident that the sorting and the recount was properly done. It's according to law, he has the power to recount. So when there is no enforcer of the compliance of the process or from a political party is a concern, then there's a part of counter-signing. So when you have 16 political parties and you see maybe one or two, what happens if a party that is not present has votes? So that's a question for both of you.
Fantastic question. That is why I said as at this time, we have to start calling out political parties who will later go on media, doing media shopping to be telling people that I would have won. That's why something happened. We are told a few minutes ago that one of the candidates stepped down. It may have been that the candidate deliberately put that story out so that he can use that after the poll. What do I mean? Like you said, in most of the polling units, you can say about 5, 4, 3, majorly 2. What does that tell? Tomorrow, you are going to tell me that you won in an election where you did not deploy up to 20–40% of party agents. You should not even begin to speak if you do not have the capacity to deploy that 5,000 plus party agents? Because you need to do your own tabulation. What they do as PVT is a role of political party. You have the responsibility as party agent to observe the process, like you said, take the result back to your party. The party does your own tabulation. Where there's discrepancies between what INEC has reported, you can then flag that, because there's another dimension to that, because results can still be cancelled at collation points. If there are malfeasance in the course of the way from ECH is written and there's a lot of issues, and you take it back to carry it to the World Collation Center, the return officer can actually query to say, man, I don't understand this, your paper. If there's no tally, for instance, you are issued 20,000, maybe 200 ballot papers, and suddenly you came back with one, and the number of ballots used is 10. So where are the other numbers? If it cannot agree, they can put on the form and say none and void. Meanwhile, your party would have taken that result to go and be calculating, but you have an agent at that collation center who will then say that, man, party unit 8 has been cancelled, please delete off from this tabulation. So the INEC result should truly agree with party tabulation if they observe the process adequately.
Mr. Do, your take on this. I know you have a lot to say.
So I look at this in 4 different ways.
Okay.
One, and there are 4 components you have to look at when it comes to this issue of party agents. Number 1, let's first of all start with data. What the data is saying is that if you are going to have the 16 political party having agents in all the 5,720 polling units, you are looking at like over 90,000 party agents. So which means in each of the polling units, you are supposed to have 16 party agents. So you will be looking at over 90,000 party agents. However, the data from INEC says only 67,000 are the party agents that the political party put forward. So when you do the tabulation, let's now say we are going to distribute them evenly or equally across the political party, across the polling unit. So which means you are going to have 11 to a political party according to what they supply. So you are going to have 5 political parties who doesn't have party agent at all. However, that is not it, because you can't distribute it evenly. You only have 1 political party that have 98% deployment of party agents. You have 2 political parties that have like about 80% deployment. The rest, you also have 10. In some instances, people are contesting election, no party agents anywhere. So that tells you, number 1, is the seriousness of those people contesting. Now, even if you cannot pay them, what about the people that believe in you, that believe in your manifesto, that they will want to volunteer? And I keep saying it until you begin to put some of these parameters in place. People will begin to use election as a means of enhancing their CV as a former governorship candidate. Meanwhile, you are not a serious contender. That is one. Then you also have to look at the commercial, the financial angle of this. What it means is that even if you are going to deploy party agents now into 5,720 polling units at 2,000, if you are giving them to 2,000, you just talked about the cost of election. That comes to who? To the party or to the candidates. So you look at that cost. It's huge. So which means on your own, you must make budget for 5,720 party agents for you to be able to
have your eyes everywhere.
To have your eyes everywhere. That is a lot of money. However, and that is why some people say, look, the money that goes into election is either you are in power or you are in one of the strong party that will be able to compete favorably. Because this alone can push you away.
Does cost already disenfranchise chance?
Cost already disenfranchise a lot of people. Why? So how are you? Okay, so that is so the issue here is that number 1, you have culturally the practice and the habit of volunteerism is off. Nobody wants to volunteer. In the US, people volunteer to be agents, to say they volunteer. In fact, to volunteer, they contribute resources on their own. So this, you don't have it. So you want me to be a party agent, you must pay me. Okay. The same mentality that says, look, you want my vote, you must buy it. It's the same thing.
We're going to come to that vote buying conversation yet again because it's a recurrent decimal. But we'll go on this quick break. I still have continuing coverage of the Anambra State governorship election. We're broadcasting live from Awka, the Anambra State capital. Our eyes and our ears are all over the place, and we're also expecting the Collation Center, the State Collation Center, to open anytime soon. If it doesn't open, and Channels Television will be on ground to bring you every moment of those announcements of the final result and eventual winner is pronounced by the Independent National Electoral Commission. But for now, we're taking a look back at the process and the exercise. Join us in just a moment. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our continuing coverage of the Anambra State governorship election. We're broadcasting from Awka, the Anambra State capital. The voters have done their part in deciding who they've chosen. The verdict is in. INEC has one responsibility to announce the verdict of the people. We've seen numbers from IRF that close to 90% of the polling unit results have now been uploaded. So all attention, all eyes will now shift to the State Collation Center, where the local government returning officers will file out in their sequence, 21 of them, to announce what happened in their local government. And then the returning officer and the state will make that eventual announcement as to who won today's election as far as the governorship election. But my guests are still seated here. Mr. Austin Aigbe, Situation Room Analyst, and Bukola Edowu, also Situation Room Analyst. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Let me come to you. I know it was landing on his thought, but you continue so that he has a chance to talk. You know, it feels, because we're still talking about money here, funding, party agents and all of that, and the inability of some party agents, of political parties, to be able to have an issue like they've lost because they don't have the capacity to fund putting their persons in place. And he talks about volunteerism, which is perhaps not a culture here anymore. That could have scaled down the cost. But let's expand it to the voters. Someone had told me, someone high up there, had said one day, and it was quite instructive, but I'm beginning to see it. It feels like when it comes to election, whether you're winning or you're losing, it needs financial defense.
Yeah, very true. You see, when you mentioned that, I was like, I mean, if you are going to engage in a journey, I'm sure when Channels was moving to Anambra, you had a budget. You had discussed all the consequences, all of the issues, and you also have maybe what we call contingency in case the unseen is not noticed on the way. If you do a D- plan, you should be able to see whatever on the way as you are going. But just, I think, like he said, very correct. Most politicians are beginning to contest elections for negotiation reasons. That I contested with you. Some do that to be able to sit on the table on the day of sending peace accord, so they are able to see who they can negotiate with, like a networking session. Where will you get involved?
I've heard that before.
Where will you get involved in a game that you? I mean, when I saw the data in KDI's office, where they're looking at tracking of finance, campaign finance, that one of the candidates has not spent 1,500 naira. For Christ's sake. You see, why do you have to add to the number to be 16? Can we that's why I think that is important.
Say what you said again. I think I missed it. What did you say?
1,500 naira.
Is what? What is that?
Campaign finance for this candidate. Let's not mention names.
No, you won't. I won't let
1,500 compared to the other that are spent about. There is a data that shows.
It is true.
Yes,
that is true. We track campaign finance, and then that is it.
So there's another candidate who has spent about 2 billion. The one who has spent 2 billion may have had, you can say they had more resource at its disposal. Fantastic. But you don't have the resource at your disposal. So why are you putting the burden on the state? You will see those same political actors, they'll be blaming INEC for not doing voter education. Those parties, the parties are responsible for voter education. You are talking about parties. What's party? They are people full of members. So why can't the members sit in their polling unit? I mean, for INEC to register a political party, there are names they will supply across the federation. There are more than the number we are talking about. See, when we talk about election all over the world is expensive. I don't want to, even SUG election now is becoming very expensive because most of them want to wear their title. You know, I like this country where we use His Excellency very freely. You use honorable. In fact, some are even right honorable. I haven't lost election like 5 times.
You came with a jab today.
No, it's painful because we have to begin to deal with these issues. And there need to be some very good hammer. You have to pass processes. That is why when you look at independent candidate, you earn yourself on the ballot. You earn yourself on the ballot because there have to be certain individuals who need to sign you to the ballot. You don't do because you're a member of a political party, because again, that's our jurisprudence. You can contest election. Once the party feed you, that's fine. Whether the people feed you or not is immaterial. And then we are going to see that over in majority of the polling units, less than 10 political parties could not measure up. In fact, if not more, because right now we cannot get it. We don't have the data at our disposal. It's important to nip those in the bud. You don't push the cost of election to the state when you have a responsibility to do same.
You know, he's fired from all cylinders, and I think he knows who is directing his thoughts to. But it's not about the burden on the states, because ballot papers have been printed. The state has spent money. Sometimes there's an obligation to these political parties. And he used the word like it's a networking session. The reason why we're saying all of this is because when you come out to say you want to contest, people emotionally invest in you. What does that do to this? What do you think? On one hand, you're thinking everybody has a right to vote and be voted for. On the other hand, it's expensive. So where do we strike this balance? So
I think it's part of the electoral reforms that we need to begin to look at. And then we have to now begin to see how we reduce the cost of our election. You see, you are only talking about the cost of INEC. You are not talking about the cost that the police used to deploy 45,000 men into this place. Many of them brought out from various states, neighboring states, who are going to get out-of-state allowance. You have to look at that is police. We have not talked about civil defense. We have not talked about the DSS and the rest. Then you also have to look at the cost of procurement, you know, for the election. Then what about the cost, the alternative for gun? And what is the alternative for gun? Because when you are having an election, you shut down everywhere. So some people will not be able to sell. They also lost. That is a cost to them too. So you have to also look at a whole lot of things involved. But what do we need to do? We need to begin to look into electoral reform. And most importantly, one thing that we need as a reform urgently is our attitude as a nation. Do you also know that naturally, I don't even have to have an agent there when there is a trust, when we have an attitude that, look, nobody will steal my vote, that my vote is going to count. I don't even need to have an agent there. It's lack of trust that you need an eye there, you need an eye there. So we need, that is one area I have to look at. And in fact, when you talk about that cost, you also have to extend it to the cost you use on litigation, the judiciary. So, but all in all, what I am trying to say now is that to round it off is that we have to also change our attitude, both from the government and the citizen.
Excellent point you've raised, and the passion that has been put into this is clear that we all want this thing to work. There's another part of the conversation we didn't even get to. Maybe I'll talk to you with other guests. That has to do with what is going on now in terms of the collations. And remember what fell out of the Edo State governorship election. This hour.
Around this time.
It is this hour.
This is the hour has come.
The hour. I call it the calm before the storm. So anybody who misses this moment is gone. But I must thank you both. Austin Aigbe, Situation Room Analyst, Bukola Idowu, Situation Room Analyst. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I appreciate you both. Thank you.
Thank you.